Is everyone feeling better about the budget? It's been 2 weeks now. Maybe I'll shut up about it next week. And it'll be about 2 years from now until we have a new budget from what is expected to be a conservative government. I don't like to talk politics, but I would like to see what the next budget looks like before I make the decision on when to sell the remainder of my portfolio. Welcome to the Truth About Real Estate Investing show for Canadians. I've been your host since 2016. My name is Erwin Cito. Investors, not just real estate investors, continue to be disappointed with the recent tax changes around increasing capital gains inclusion on personal and corporate-owned investments. Both the Canadian and Ontario medical associations, so this is the association that's belonged to by medical doctors in Canada and Ontario. They have asked the Trudeau government to reconsider, as many doctors incorporate their medical practices for the tax advantages to make their income more comparable to their American counterparts. This is something that was done by our governments to allow them to incorporate, to stem the brain drain of our locally trained doctors, our Canadian locally trained doctors, from moving from Canada to the USA. Unlike government employees, these doctors don't have pensions to rely on. If you're having trouble finding a family doctor or know someone who is, and I think you all do, I know my own assigned family doctor is not trained in Canada and they're not from Canada. That seems to really be the reality these days. It's going to get worse, and it will likely, it's going to be worse, and it will be less likely that someone will receive a doctor trained in Canada, where we have some of the finest medical schools in the world. Quality of life will continue to diminish in Canada. Cherry and I have no plans to move to the USA. Other than we're going to move part of our real estate portfolio now, and later in the future, after we have that new budget, we are investigating private health care for ourselves and my family, because we will not rely on this government to take care of us. They've not done the best job of it, in my opinion. Canada is still a comparatively wonderful country to live in. To buy a house, raise a family safely and securely, or a diverse culture. Ask any international student what they left behind to come here, and what alternatives they found in places like Dubai or Singapore, which have wonderful opportunity, but they treat their non-residents very differently than Canada. There's a reason why we have so many international students here. The path to permanent residency is much easier in Canada than elsewhere. It may be tough to get it, but it's much tougher in other places in the world. I just returned from a week in Singapore, widely considered among the least affordable cities in the world. Some places have it ranked top 2 for least affordable in the world. The path to permanent residency there is much harder than it is in Canada. Plus, also the living conditions and the income, the ability to earn income. It's not as easy there as it is here. The opportunity, though, is among the best in the world. I met a gentleman from Shanghai, who said that Singapore was basically the Silicon Valley of Asia. That is where businesses go to grow and raise capital, and that's where investors go to look for high-flying young people with businesses they want to invest in. They also have a low tax in Singapore, a flat 15% income tax, but my word, is housing ever expensive. According to Wise.com, a one-bedroom apartment in the city center average rent is $3,625. That's a 2022 number, so it's likely higher today. So again, one-bedroom apartment in the city center is $3,625, one bedroom. That's higher than a Toronto one-bedroom, where the market rent is around $2,500 right now. The price to buy in Singapore seems to be around 50% higher as well. Would I live or invest in Singapore? Likely not, even if I could afford it. But with the new capital gains taxes, I just have, after being through Singapore and looking at the real estate, it just makes way more sense in combination with the new Canadian capital gains taxes. It makes way more sense to own less expensive properties. To stay under the $250,000 in capital gains, for example, I can own 3 houses in the USA versus 1 triplex here. It's easier to sell. So say those real estate investments do well, either the triplex or the single family homes in the US. It's easier to sell 1 house per year in order to spread out my capital gains and remain under the $250,000 barrier, versus I can't split a triplex when I sell it. You have to imagine that these new capital gains rules were designed to go after real estate investors. The case to invest in the USA only gets stronger. I'm booking more and more calls every day. I'm finally getting more realtors calling who are interested in becoming referral partners of Share as well. I welcome those calls. I can understand why it was slower for realtors to come around. For those who don't know, builders offer realtors 4 to 6% commission on new construction condos. I get paid significantly less than that for referring business to Share. And then again, that's available to all realtors who are interested in referring clients to Share as well. Anyways, I'm getting I'm getting calls from people now who are more interested than ever in leaving Canada completely and moving to the States. Sherry and I are just looking to move our investments to the States. We're still staying here, but I had 2 calls today, people who are very serious about moving to the States. So their investment path is very different than my own. Anyways, as for investment, I'll look to cherry pick the best markets for investment in the States. I've added Phoenix, Arizona to my list because TSMC, for those who don't know, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, they manufacture for folks like, small little startups like NVIDIA, AMD, Apple, right? They do that right now in Taiwan, but again, they're opening up a plant in North Phoenix, which is a $65 billion investment, which may just very well be the largest manufacturing investment in US history. I like the sound of that. Historic investment. I would like my investments to be near it. And I would like to rent to really, really smart people, smart engineers and microchip manufacturers, because they likely make a lot of money. Anyways, with the way this country's going, I'm looking at property as potential homes for my kids, should they ever want to live there. So I've added crime as one of my investment criteria, crime rates. On to this week's show. We have one of my oldest real estate friends here, Andy Tran, who was among my very first clients in home inspectors. We were actually friends before we started working together. Andy as my client, I was his realtor, and I was Andy's client. He was my home inspector, and I was referring him to my clients for home inspections. It's always wonderful to have real estate investors on your team. They just know what we're looking for in terms of investment property and what renovations to do to maximize returns. And always remember that first deal that Andy and I did together. It was a detached house in Hamilton on the mountain. It was asking somewhere over $230. I forget the exact number. We actually got the deal done for $216,000. A 3-bedroom detached, one bath, 1.5 bathroom. The house had been sitting on the market for, I believe, 2 months before we came along. And during our appointment to the property, I noticed that something was not right. On the listing, it listed a man and a woman's name. For those who don't know, the listings that realtors get, we get the names of the sellers. So I noticed again there was both a man and a woman's name. They shared the same last name. But while inspecting, the fridge and the closets as part of our regular showing procedures, I could tell that only the father lived there and the kids. There's no sign a woman lived there. And then we were planning on making an offer. So I was speaking to the listing agent to gather information for our offer, and the agent informed me that the sellers were divorcing and they hated each other. Knowing that we had a motivated seller, we offered lower than I expected than we originally planned to, which was promptly accepted, which was to our surprise, especially knowing that we also included our closing costs to be paid by the sellers. This is back in 2010. Those are very different times. That same house now is probably closer to 800,000, almost 4 times in 14 years. Anyways, Andy and I have both come a long way. Fast forward to present, Andy is now a market leader in secondary and tertiary suite additions. Tertiary is another fancy way of saying third edition. In plain language, that's basement apartments or additions for self-contained apartments, or turning a garage or a garden suite, which are also apartments. A garden suite would be a detached tiny home basically in someone's backyard. That's the most common example. Andy is a master of maximizing the rental income that one can be generated from one property. Andy has consulted and designed over 100 apartment conversions between my clients and I, including land severances. If you'd like to learn more about Andy's services, it's available at Suite Edition. So you can simply go to www.suiteeditions.com, where he has checklists available for download and beginner's guides to secondary suiting, plus his in-person training program. Unfortunately, that's sold out before the show was recorded, but expect another one this fall. Andy's one of the good guys in the business, hence we're friends, and that's the truth about real estate investing. Please enjoy the show. Hey Andy, what's keeping you busy these days?
Hey, how's it going, Erwin? Yeah, a lot of things. Focusing on the usual, the sweet stuff, Sweet Edition, and
Sweet stuff.
yeah, the conversion projects. Yeah, how about yourself?
It's a loaded question.
Exactly.
But let's talk about you.
Cool.
What is a Sweet Edition?
Well, really, I mean, it encompasses many things, right? The whole idea is to take your existing property, add in additional units, right? Add in the additional suites. And I mean, we've started close to 10 years now on doing second suites. And really that's been the low-hanging fruit. And it's still the great strategy for a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. Is to, take their existing home and where can I add in that extra unit, right? Mm-hmm. So the basement always makes sense the first time. Mm-hmm. And then now, with all the changes in policy, with where the market has gone, we are seeing opportunities with going beyond, which is taking your existing house, doing 3-4 units, which is by right in a lot of cities now. And then of course with the garden suites. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been keeping us pretty busy with clients. And now, with our training as well, basically guiding people on how they can make the best use out of their property.
Super cool. So I called you the king of ADUs on social media the other day. Now can we go back to let's go back to I want people to understand like where you came from before you started a Sweet Editions, because you're highly qualified in this area. Can you talk to let's start from university. What did you take in school?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is I did go to school for architecture, and the profession that I'm in right now as a house designer, I learned a lot from architecture school to be able to kind of do what I'm doing right now. But I would say the majority of the skills that I'm applying into our service business and my investment really came down to just being in investments and being really involved in houses. And then also in between school and then my investment career in Sweet Editions, I also did there was a time period where I was a home inspector. And I learned a lot about houses as a home inspector, like seeing how furnaces actually work, seeing how insulation works, and just how construction in general.
Yeah. HVAC
that really,
systems, electrical systems.
Yeah, really that has helped.
To live.
Yeah. So it kind of everything just kind of blended together, and it made sense, for me to get into this business, as a consultant and a designer. Mm-hmm. Worked very well, as a service business, and of course my own investments, mm-hmm. and then being able to teach other people that whole process, mm-hmm. who may be new to it. And that's something that is definitely very rewarding as a career, and at the same time, it's great. Mm-hmm. With where the economy is headed and where real estate has headed. It made sense because you kind of need to do these additional suites to make the numbers work. And then of course it adds more housing units, which happens to be something we need, right?
Mm-hmm. So because I know you well, we've been friends since, oh my lord, since 2010.
Do you have that picture from 2010?
I don't have it handy. I don't have it handy. It's funny because when I showed that picture to friends, they didn't even recognize me because I was a lot chubbier back then, apparently.
Both of us.
And I was wearing glasses. The Clark Kent effect. Wearing glasses, no one recognizes you. So you've done the full gambit. You've done rent to own. You've done flip. You've done infill developments. You've done developments. You've done basement suites, garden suites yourself.
The only thing I haven't done is student rentals.
Don't you have students for living in one of your properties?
Well, I mean, it's not students. It's some of them are students, but it's kind of like individuals.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I'll still give you credit for that. Yeah. You've pretty much tried everything, and you've kind of distilled everything, your entire journey, into what you believe is the best practice now for within the GTA. Mm-hmm. Is that correct thing to say?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely have tried many different things, and there's definitely a certain consistency in everything we've done, and the whole thesis of it really comes down to densification and recognizing that it's something that we need here in not just the GTA, especially in the GTA, but across really cities in Canada and US where we've had a lot of sprawl, and in high density areas that are in high demand, like big cities like Toronto and Vancouver here in Canada. We really just have to focus on making better use of the existing infrastructure and the land, and of course, numbers have to work, right?
Right. And I forgot to mention you've done Airbnbs as well. Like you've operated Airbnbs as well.
Yeah.
You've done everything.
Yeah. I mean, really, the idea is to give things a try and see how it might fit in, right? But again, yeah, it came down to, ensuring that everything made sense financially, and then of course also fits within the densification thesis.
And it's just over 10 years ago where basement apartments became the big thing. Because that's when they started being allowed by different municipalities. Oshawa, I think, Oshawa and Toronto seemed to be like the first. Barrie was shortly after that. Hamilton always lags. So I think we finally got that in 2015. And also, almost all your strategies early on involved basement suites. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, exactly. So again, it was the low-hanging fruit, right? Like, basement suites are nothing new. They've been around forever. Like, when my family first immigrated to Canada, I mean, we stayed in a illegal basement suite, and they've been around forever. But it's because I attribute it to the fact that because as real estate in the past 10, 15 years have gotten more unaffordable, people just had to come up with other solutions, right? So our focus has always been helping clients, homeowners, and investors make the best basement suite possible, right? Make it almost like, a condo that is basically it's a portion of it is underground, but really make it an appealing place because the folks that are living there are not, maybe the stereotypical basement dwellers that people thought about, 15, 20 years ago, but these are, a lot of them are regular middle income earning people. Maybe they're single, maybe, it's a student or, single parent or something like that. They still, they have a good job. They still want to live in a nice place, but they just can't afford to live in an entire house, whether it's purchasing or renting. And some, maybe a little bit financially in a better situation, they'll live in one part of a house. But for the average family, it's very difficult to rent or own an entire single family property in many of our cities, right? So really our focus has been, okay, how do we make it so that it is going to be appealing? And every unit, vast majority of the units that my clients are involved with, these are all fully legal, fully renovated, just really high-end finishes, right? All your high-end kitchen finishes, stone countertops, etc., to make it appealing for that middle income earner that may be just priced out of the market.
And we're recording this in late March, where the market is still pretty soft while interest rates remain historically high. But I'm already hearing from my friends in Toronto that duplexes are in high demand from buyers, which I think is really fascinating. Because before, like on the run up in the market, everything leading up to like 2021, like duplexes were, you couldn't, if you had one, it sold immediately, and they were selling for like $1 million.
Yeah.
Now today, I think we're around $800,000, but I don't think we're far away from getting back to those prices. And I'm talking about secondary markets in Toronto. I don't even know what a duplex goes for, but I know it's for a lot. So for the newer investor that's listening, can you explain the concept of housing densification and the significance in today's real estate market?
Yeah, so a lot ties back to kind of what I stated earlier about the need for that because most people can't afford houses, right? So, the way our, cities and towns have been designed, post-war has really been about suburban sprawl. And it made sense back in the day when things were really cheap, right? Like just resources and materials and
lots of land
was available. Yeah. I mean, we still have a lot of land available. It's just that it's very difficult to build and maintain the infrastructure that's out there, right?
Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah. So we're still, it's very challenging because essentially all levels of government are broke right now, whether doesn't matter if it's municipal, provincial, federal. Everybody's just really borrowing to pay for, a lot of the new infrastructure, right? So to kind of mitigate that is to say, why don't we use the existing infrastructure? And when I say infrastructure, I mean the existing roads, the existing land, the existing services and utilities. A lot of housing is, it's not just building the house. It's everything that is, all the context around that property, right? So you have all the gas lines, the sewer systems, everything that goes to the house. You have the infrastructure, the roads to get to that house on a day-to-day basis for the occupant. So how do we utilize that existing infrastructure to kind of build more? And if you already have an existing property, let's say you have a 3,000 square foot home that is, you don't need all of that space for 2 people or 3 people. Well, very easy method is to subdivide that into 2, 3, or even 4 units, and then you can have it for multiple 2 people or 3 people families, and then you have your backyard, and all of that is it ties into the densification, right? And then if you want to take it a step beyond, if you have a very large lot, you can then subdivide that and basically do infill development, sever the lot, and then build additionally as well. Sorry, do you mind if I just close this? Does that make sense?
It makes sense because just to give some context to folks, is the average household is actually shrinking. There's less and less people living in each house in Canada, which actually exacerbates the whole housing supply issue as well. There's fewer people living inside a property, which so it makes sense if you have space that's not being occupied, might as well rent it out and make some money.
Well, that's a very interesting point that you bring up, because we hear a lot about extreme population growth in a city like Toronto, right? So let's use Toronto as our example here. So you hear about 100,000 people moving into the GTA and overcrowding of schools and overcrowding of facilities, but it's not uniformly distributed across the city in that manner, right? So you see there's a really good zoning map, and we can pull that up later, where it shows the city of Toronto, and it shows it in color, where the yellow belt is this area of all single-family homes, and it's very spread out across, metropolitan Toronto. And then you have these strips of red, the high-density corridors, where a lot of the development's happening, a lot of the condos. So you do have a lot of overcrowding in those areas that are already high density, and then you have, school issues with overcrowding. But the vast majority of the entire city, you have single-family residents right now where there's a decline in school population. Like there's schools that actually have to close down because they don't have enough enrollment of people. And then you have these neighborhoods, like my neighborhood's one of them, where I would say that probably 75% are seniors, and there are no kids, there are no families. But when those developments were built in the 60s, that whole area was teeming with kids, right? Like, Halloween is kind of a sad sight, because it's like every 5th house or 6th house has it set up for people to collect candy, because there's a lot of seniors that don't necessarily want to be part of that because of safety concerns, right? And it's understandable, but it's just sad because like you have these neighborhoods that are built for families, but now they're not occupied by families, right? There are a lot of empty nesters that what are they going to do? They're going to sell, and then they're going to move into a condo. I mean, some of them do, but you just don't have the families because they can't afford it. Yeah. It just comes down to that. So how can we make those neighborhoods affordable, right? Is to create additional units that are going to be less in cost than your standard single family home. Like whether it's renting or purchasing, right?
So you were a home inspector. You're working for one of the biggest outfits in Toronto in the education area for that home inspection company. So what motivated you to start Sweet Additions?
That's a great question. So, I mean, when I was doing home inspections, that's when I was really learning about, how, and at the same time I was doing investing, right? So I was kind of like looking at houses, and then at the same time looking at it from a financial standpoint. And also at the same time, people are always asking me whenever I did inspections, especially in Toronto where you had a lot of illegal apartments, people always ask me, is this legal? Can I rent this out? And I didn't have a good answer for them. I was always saying, speak to your realtor or call your lawyer.
That's like
and
the worst advice.
yeah, and so invariably it didn't, they didn't get the answer that they were looking for. So I in 2010 I just said, you know what, let me go through this process and learn everything. So I duplexed our home that we purchased in 2009 to a legal duplex, and through that process I learned that how to do things properly. Obviously I knew that there was a permit involved, I just didn't know the entire scope. So through that time period from 2010 to 2015, I was really educating people. I was as a inspector and as an energy auditor, I was educating realtors. I was going out doing a lot of talks in their offices, explaining the process, and then people would continue to ask me. And I just saw that there was this demand, and I saw that, and as an investor as well, people needed to add these second units. Right when I first purchased that property with you on Ridge, where we were on the roof, I was collecting $1,500 in rent for the entire house. And I was still able to get $400 in cash flow on that property, right?
The good old days.
So the good old days. So that's definitely impossible. And we started seeing that trend to say, hey, these numbers don't make sense. So I saw that opportunity, and I had that experience in those 5 years of teaching people, basically for free, doing talks in real estate offices and explaining these details to home inspection clients when I was on site, that I said, hey, you know what, why don't I turn this into a consulting business? And that's really when 2015 was when I really started to take it seriously. And then we started doing consulting, and then started building a design team, and really, the rest is history, right? We've been close to 500 projects right now.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
because there was big demand. I remember back then, like we needed expert advice on how to do this properly. Like we had some loose guidelines. Well, to me, they seemed kind of loose from the city, but we need someone to help our clients get through the process to get their permits, because contractors were busy. They didn't want to be getting permits. But there's all that process before it. There's all the measuring, design, all work that had to be done. Mm-hmm. The contractors generally, that wasn't their strength, right? So we need that gap between getting a new property. First of all, identifying the proper property for a basement apartment, because we could no longer cash flow in single family homes. So we had to force the ability to cash flow by adding density, doing basement suites. But no one knew how to do it. Oh, can you comment? You mentioned 2010 you did your basement apartment. What do you think the budget was for that?
Oh man, I mean, I did a lot of the work myself, and I hired a plumber, I hired an electrician. But I did, yeah. I mean, it was.
How many square feet? First of all, how many square feet's that basement?
It's not big. It's like 500 square feet.
Okay, so small,
right?
Yeah.
It's like a 1 bedroom, right? So I mean, I probably spent like $20K on materials.
Oh, you did it nice.
I spent $20K on materials. I just bought everything myself, like from Home Depot, and and I did a lot of the work myself, and then I probably paid about $25K in like trades.
Okay, yeah.
So I probably spent, like, not including my time, obviously, probably like 45,000 to convert an unfinished basement to a legal suite.
Right. And then what would that basement cost today if you were to hire somebody?
Oh, probably at least 120 or something.
That's it, eh? That's not bad.
125 maybe, depending on what needs to be done.
So we're talking about like 2.5x in terms of budget.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Inflation's a bitch.
Yeah. And it's not getting cheaper, right? Like materials are still going up. Labor is kind of stable a bit, I'd say.
I don't think it'll last long.
Yeah, probably not, because I think there's a little bit of a slowdown right now with production builds, I've heard. So we might, it might be this next 6 months or so where there might be a little bit of a respite in terms of labor costs. But yeah, it's not going to, I think everything's just going to keep going up.
Right. Because our friend who's a painter in Toronto, I heard he's already picking up.
Yeah. Like
Toronto is like the epicenter of like real estate for the GTA. And speaking specifically around anything that's on the land, which we've always talked about, we can't suite. That's probably one of the reasons why I never bought apartment condos, because there's no value add. You can't really value add anything. If it's rough and you can make it nicer, yeah, you can. That's a value add.
Yeah,
but I can't suite it.
Yeah. I mean, our message has always been, how do you insulate yourself from market conditions that are outside of your control, right? Interest rates are outside of our control. Population growth or decline, that's outside of our control. But so if you buy a condo, I mean, the best thing you can do is, if it's an older condo, you can refurnish it, or remodel it. With new kitchens and bathrooms and paint and stuff like that. But with a house, I can do substantially more to it, right? Especially if you have a larger lot, you can force that appreciation to the property. So that will, in effect, help insulate against things that are outside of your control, right? So that's why it doesn't, if you have the resources, it doesn't make sense to not take action on something like that if you wanna progress, and because we don't really know. At the time when rates were low, we don't know if they were going to stay low forever, and then now that it's high, we don't know when it's going to come down. So the only variable that we have is ourselves and our ability to understand that process and be able to add value regardless of market conditions. So that's kind of the message that we deliver, is that there's always something that you can do, that you can take action on, that is going to help your situation financially and make the property more valuable and increase the cash flow potential as well.
Yeah. And then the cash flow piece is huge, and people are really realizing that today. Like folks who bought condos, and I hear regularly people are negative cash for like $2,000 a month on a condo they bought, versus the duplex. It's considerably better than that. Again, depends on how much they've leveraged it.
Yeah, I mean, right now, if you look at the market, like single-family homes in GTA are still very much in high demand.
Oh, yeah,
there's not enough of it, but then condos have come down, right? So you're going to get more volatility with condos for sure. So when the market is at an upswing, it's easy for people to get in because there's no real, there's not much construction work or needed. So it's easy for people to kind of make that purchase and rent it out. But it's more volatile when the market does come down, right? Where you have a little bit more stability in the single family home market.
And I'm not poo-pooing on condos. I was just telling a young client of mine he should probably grab one of these condos, 2-bedroom, so he can have one room that he can rent it out on Airbnb or something, get some money coming in. But the key point was also to buy something off a motivated seller, because there's lots of them right now.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's great. Like if all you can afford is a condo, I think now is a great time.
Or that fits your lifestyle.
Or just to kind of start the equity, so that you a lot of our clients and our students started off with condos, right? But they were able to build an equity, like 50,000, 100,000, that they can basically move that over to single family homes.
So I think we kind of talked about that. This is the future trend for investment in the GTA. Like it's low hanging fruit was the term we threw around a lot before we started recording. Can you talk more about that? Like okay, so talk to a beginner investor interested in accessory dwelling units. Like where do they start?
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about it from the standpoint of the existing structure, and then also ancillary structures, which is a detached structure, right?
Right. So before we even talk about that, who should be considering this?
I would say that's first and foremost, someone who, let's say, wants to live in a house. Let's say wants to live in an area that single-family homes offer, such as access to certain schools, access to communities, community centers, or other community amenities. Somebody that wants to live there but won't necessarily be able to afford it entirely.
Without the extra income.
Correct. Yeah. Maybe they'll be able to afford the mortgage. Maybe they'll be able to get a mortgage. Maybe they have some help from family that they can kind of get in, but they won't be able to sustain it. Right, so this makes a lot of sense for those folks, and then for other investors that maybe they've had success for a number of years in the rental market, and now they kind of want to look for a way to keep the cash flow going, and recognize the importance of making these changes so that they can keep the value of their property and be able to invest for the long term. That would be the second group. So the first would be, I would say, your own situation. Like you want to live in this area, but you just can't afford it, right? So for those folks, how do they get started? Well, first of all, you got to find the house that you like in the area that you like. And I would argue that find a property where you have that potential to be able to do those multi-unit conversions, right? So I kind of broken it down into the existing property and then the ancillary structure, which is like a detached, separate structure in itself. So with the existing structure, again, low hanging fruit is a basement. You already have a footprint in your basement that's probably underutilized, right? Maybe there's maybe it's unfinished. Maybe there was a rec room. Maybe there was an illegal suite that you can easily convert for, low five figures to now be able to rent out for, who knows, in some markets, $2,000 and higher.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So that really,
I just saw Milena Simic posted one on her Instagram. I think her investment was like just over 40 grand, and she's getting 3,500 as a short-term rental
Yeah.
a month.
yeah, yeah.
Like how does this not make sense to people?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If the market allows you to do short-term rentals, I think that's a great idea if you're willing to do that. But mid-term furnished rentals is a great idea as well in the GTA.
Well, I've been like for my friends and clients, I've been saying like if it's your own home, because it seems almost every municipality has much easier rules if it's in your own home.
Sure.
Like that just to me makes so much more sense. Do short-term rental. Even hire a property management company to do with it. My advice to people is just tell people you're the tenant as well. Don't ask you to fix stuff. I'm just a tenant here. I can't fix anything. Have a professional manage the short-term rental operation. Because the idea of someone not paying you rent in your own home just makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah. That's why I think if it's your own home, I would probably be very, very careful about long-term tenants. Because you're living there, right? It's not like you can kind of just switch it off.
Yeah.
So if they become a nightmare tenant, then that's really just going to affect you and your family, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, are looking at short and medium term, right? Like going after people who may not necessarily be here for a long time. Maybe they're a professional, maybe they're a student, and if it's nicely furnished, you can command higher rent, right? A lot of people don't want to necessarily go through the hassle of bringing in furniture. So there's definitely that market for. So it makes our strategy, we call it the max suite strategy, right? Is to kind of maximize, in a reasonable way, your existing property and then potentially adding another detached unit into it as well. So basement is kind of the first low hanging fruit. And then now with multiplex policies in Toronto and other cities, you can convert your existing structure into 3 or 4 units. So if you're able to do that, if the property lends itself well to that type of arrangement, then it makes sense. If you have a detached garage that's in good structural condition, that's underutilized, you can convert that, right?
And that's low-hanging fruit as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've worked on, I would say, more than a dozen garage conversions right now where, we've taken a good structural garage like that had a good foundation, good slab, good structure, and converted that for, half the cost compared to what it would be if you were to build brand new.
Right.
Because you already have the shell, the structure, and then the foundation. All you have to do is bring in services and you're finishing the inside, insulating.
Right.
So that's going to really bring the cost down, right? So that would be, in terms of a detached structure, that would be the next low-hanging fruit, is an existing garage. I think that's probably, I would say, that's probably right now the single biggest opportunity right now in terms of return on investment, is to convert a well-constructed garage. Because people that are listing their property with a garage that is in good condition, they're not thinking that someone's going to convert this to a housing unit. So that may not necessarily be reflected in their price, right? So for example, when we started in 2010, nobody was putting in legal basement apartments. So people were not pricing their properties to say, this is going to be a legal basement apartment. But as 2015 towards 2020, like that period of time, every house, there was that potential, and the market price reflected that, right?
It took time, but yeah.
Yeah, but I would say that we have a window of time right now between, I would say the next 2-3 years where people don't recognize that, and then you're going to see more of these, and then in the next few years, people are going to say, hey, there's a potential to convert this garage, and you're going to see that in the prices. So right. I think right now there is a unique opportunity from that standpoint.
I remember back in like 2015ish, around then, I was actually trying to analyze if there was a price difference between 1.5-story houses in Hamilton, because generally I found 1.5-story houses don't have the ceiling height for basement apartment, so there's way less opportunity. Generally, there are smaller footprints as well, versus our bread and butter for the basement apartment suite strategy was bungalows, and they did have ceiling height, and there was almost no price difference between the two. But then that diverged. then any house that that had the potential of basement suite, just because of the ceiling height and separate side entrance, those houses were starting to command a higher price. And then the realtors started advertising that in the descriptions as well. So it came slowly, but it came.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're just going to see the next phase of it with garages that you can convert.
Yeah, with garages, with the existing property, with big yards. Like if you have big yards, people are going to start saying, hey, you know what, there's garden suite potential here.
Laneways.
Yeah, and there's going to be people that want that. And that's where the competition is going to come in, right? Because people are going to be educated in it. They're going to understand laneway properties. They're going to understand garden suites. And that's going to drive that competition. But it's not there yet. So that's why I'm encouraging people to really, take this opportunity. And if there's, if the market is a little bit soft, then that might be a time to kind of take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I apologize to the Vancouver listener because they're like, oh yeah, this is 10 years ago. This is not new information, guys. Thanks. Because I remember, I think I was in Vancouver like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And a RAIN member was showing me around.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, look at that garden suite. It was a garage conversion laneway house. One of those. It was a laneway house. He's like, someone severed that off the back of the lot and sold it for $800,000. A laneway house. I'm like, that's insane. And that's my point. So apologies to the Vancouver listeners. Like you guys have been doing this for like 10 years already. Is that anything like that going to come to GTA where we're able to sever off like a garden suite or laneway house?
Right now, there's no talks of that because I think it's really one step at a time. They don't want to.
Yeah, we're still
too
early.
much. Yeah, we're still early. I mean, really, with the multiplex and the garden suites and the laneway suites, we still need to get people really accepting that that's the new reality. But I think going forward, there's going to be more creative things, and we can look into. I know, we can talk about the U.S. as well because there's some innovative things happening there with this type of property. We're going to start seeing interesting things that are already happening in other markets come to the GTA. I would say within the next 5 years. So 5 years ago, when I said that the cities are going to start allowing detached units, people said that's crazy. Like I had urban planners saying that's never going to happen here.
So employees of the city or consultants?
What's that?
These are urban planner employees of the city, or these were
like private planners. Like so, I said that given where our market is, understanding kind of where real estate is going, understanding where the economy is going, and seeing the use of our space. 5 years ago, I said they're going to start allowing ADUs and garden suites. And I had private urban planners tell me that's never going to happen because they were kind of in this silo of working with the city and getting rejected and dealing with NIMBYism that they said that this would never pass. But hey, you know what? We're here, right? And so there's going to be things I would say that's going to happen in 5 years that we didn't anticipate. So I think your question of severance, I think that's going to be very interesting because it's going to allow people to get into home ownership, right? There's going to be a big backlash. There already is of people who can't get into the housing market. They can't get on the housing ladder, right? So to be able to subdivide a garden suite or even be able to have, condoizing existing houses converted into 3-4 units, those kinds of creative, innovative structures and strategies are going to be coming in the next few years
because they already exist in Vancouver.
Yeah. So in other markets they exist, severing your garden suite. So
or condominiumizing your triplex conversion. Yeah.
So you were in Austin in January, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I was there last year. 2022. And we visited a bunch of ADU builds, and you can't even tell which one's the ADU and which one's the main house. They're almost the same in size, and then after they've built them, they sever them. So if you have a nice corner lot, that's great because then it can really look like a separate property. But some of them were built in the backyard with a driveway leading to them, and they had separate fences. And the owners told us this is like 2 separate titles. So after they built it, they severed it, and then they had basically an HOA, a homeowners association.
Of 2 properties?
2 properties, but then also as part of others as well.
Okay.
But it was basically a condo, and they would have a reserve fund for things that are common. So for example, their landscaping, their driveway, if there's any sort of connected utilities that are being shared, like any drain pipes or things like that. So you had, in a city like Austin where there's always things happening and there's a lot of, for example, tech there, right? Like Tesla and everything.
Dell,
There's a
yeah.
lot of people that, they want to buy a house, but again, the real estate prices are very high there as well.
Yeah.
So they were able to build these ADUs for, let's say, 300,000-400,000, and then they would sell them, essentially flip them after building it and separating the title for 600,000-700,000. And people would just excuse me, people would just snap them up because it made sense, right? They were after the house, they were not after the land. So you're going to start seeing those types of things, but there's no talk of it right now. I even see the potential to build multi-units within the garden suite, within the ADU.
Where? Here in Austin or here locally?
I would, of course, there's none of that right now, but I see that as a future potential because we know how expensive construction is. And to build something for a single unit, a lot of times the numbers don't make sense. So I think that municipalities are going to be forced to have other solutions to incentivize people to build more.
Yeah, more density for new builds.
Yeah.
To incentivize investors.
Yeah,
because otherwise they won't do it.
Yeah, whether you're a homeowner or an investor, if I build this additional house as a income generation tool, it's different if I have a family member living there, but I still want to make sure that it makes sense financially. If I can build this and I can rent it out as two separate units, it may justify the cost to build, right? Because it could cost, in Toronto, it'll cost you anywhere between 300 to 500,000 to build, even a small home, right? Like just cost.
Let's get into some numbers. But what would be the size? How many square feet would be the $300,000 to $500,000 garden suite?
So I would say that's probably going to be, depending, of course, on the finishes and depending on, how nice it's going to be. And
generally, they seem to be nice.
Yeah.
Or it's all just real estate porn.
Yeah, I would say, it would start probably single story, 600, 700 square feet, to, all the way to, so I had a client that I worked with in near the Annex in Toronto. I helped her with the main property, and she had Lanescape help her with the laneway house.
Yeah.
I think it was around the $500,000 mark to build. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-story unit, very super modern.
Wow,
beautiful unit. And we had people say that was extremely cheap, and we had people that said it was extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And I said, and they're like $500,000 to build this thing in my backyard. That's crazy.
But they forget the land was free.
The land was free. So the thing is, that's the key value is the free land. So if I were to,
land.
So it's underutilized, right? Unless you're going to be using that backyard for another reason, it's underutilized. So really the only expense, if you're not going to use that land anyways, is to build that structure, which costed her around $500,000. Now you got a 3-bedroom home in Annex, walking distance to
nice location.
Walking distance to I guess Bathurst and Bloor, that area. It was like Koreatown. Like there's just a really high density area that is very appealing for a lot of people. So you compare $500,000 to what you can get in that area. So I looked and saw what you can get. You can get a studio apartment right on the corner of Bathurst and Bloor for $600,000. So you don't even get a bedroom, right? So in one sense, yes, the $500,000 is a lot of money. But then if you compare it with that, and I mean, she's able to rent it to, I think the last time I spoke to her, which was over a year ago, it was renting for over $4,000.
Oh my Lord!
Yeah,
$4,000.
Yeah.
So
it's a
3-bedroom. $48,000 a year for a $500,000 investment. And the 4,000 plus utilities, right?
Yeah, well, it's a 3-bedroom. Yeah, of course, plus utilities because everything was separated,
which is incredibly important in today's high inflation world.
Yeah, so it's a brand new 3-bedroom home, right? Walking distance to the subway. You don't even need a car.
And exempted from rent control.
Yeah.
Do you have a picture of it on your Instagram?
Sorry?
Do you have a picture of it?
I might. I do have a YouTube video of it that talked about it, so we can pull that up if you like.
Where can they find your YouTube?
Sweet Editions on YouTube.
Any punctuations? Because I look at your Instagram, it's sweet _editions on your Instagram.
I think if you just go Sweet Editions on YouTube, you'll be able to pull it up. I don't know if you want to do that right now, but you can see that property. So, it definitely. Oh, interesting. There's an American flag there.
just to talk about building costs. build cost in Texas is like $110 a square foot.
Yeah.
American.
Yeah.
Versus here we're talking about like 500 a square foot.
Yeah. So if you scroll down, Adam, you'll see it.
Look at you, Mr. Influencer.
Right there. We converted 1 unit to 4. That one, multiplex 4-unit conversion. So that got a little decent amount of traction. People are very interested in that.
Because if you're going to invest in Toronto, this seems to make a lot of sense. You need to add to densification.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I would say that traditionally within our community, Erwin, it was very tough for people to make Toronto work unless you were investing in condos. But now that all of these policies for garden suites and multiplexes, it's really starting to make sense, especially if you want a house hack. Like if you want to say, I'm going to turn this house into 5 units, I'm going to live in 1 unit, and all the rent that I'm getting is going to pay for my expenses, and it's going to be and it's going to be this long-term investment for me.
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't need to live in a 3,000 square foot home. Yeah. With me, my spouse, and 2 kids, kind of thing, right?
Because duplex, fiveplex, whatever, will be likely a good investment in the GTA over the long term. So let's get into a little bit of the detail. Which municipalities within the GTA or just outside the GTA have good, have friendly zoning and whatnot?
Yeah. Funny thing is, we just completed a video top 10 towns in Ontario for multiplex conversions.
Let's talk about it.
So that's going to be coming out in the next few weeks. But I would say Toronto's number 1. I'm just going to start from there. Toronto's number 1.
And let's just explain that as well, because Toronto's number 1 because they had the biggest crisis for
ground zero.
They're ground zero for the biggest housing crisis between them and Vancouver.
Yeah, right? Ground zero for housing. I'm focusing on Ontario, right? Because that's our main audience. Yeah. But I would say ground zero for housing affordability, and also ground zero for innovation with housing policy.
Yeah, and by far the most progressive.
Yeah,
I've heard investors getting parking requirements waived because they're close to a subway station or a streetcar station.
If you put in a garden suite, you could be in Scarborough or you could be in North York. If you put in a garden suite, you need 0 parking for the entire property. You need 2 bicycle parking spaces.
Interesting.
So if you
build in Scarborough, is
everywhere.
Is TTC that good up in Scarborough?
Well, here's the idea. The idea is not that people are not going to have parking, but you should leave it up to the homeowner or the market to decide, right? Yeah. If I'm a homeowner or I'm an investor, and I turn this Scarborough property into 5 units, and I offer 0 parking, well, it just means that my tenant base is going to be reduced. Yeah. As a business owner, I would say, hey, why don't I provide at least 2 parking spaces, 3 parking spaces? But that's up to me to decide, not up to a planning official to say that I'm 6 inches off and now I have to go to a minor variance.
Yeah, so
if I get rejected, I have to go.
Landlord friendly then.
Yeah, it would say let the market decide on that, right? And so I think that's the approach they've taken. And then
we're
the reality
prioritizing
also is
housing
that,
over parking, which is probably a good policy in a housing crisis.
And I'm not against parking. Like I believe that parking is a good thing, you're right? Like it's valuable. You drive a car, I drive a car, and I think it's great. But let the house owner decide whether it's necessary, and if it is, they'll provide it, right? All of my properties have parking in them, right? So, yeah, it's a beautiful property.
That was $500,000. This one?
Yeah, something like that.
Holy cow!
Yeah, 3 bedrooms.
Nice touches. And this was in the annex in Toronto.
Yeah,
yeah, very nice. 4,000 rent.
Over 4,000.
That's a duplex in Hamilton.
Yeah, and I mean it's just going to keep going up, right? Rent's just going to keep going up. So. I think that's as a house hacking strategy, it definitely makes a lot of sense. So we're really focused right now on giving people the tools and the resources to do this. So we have a ton of content on our YouTube channel. We have our website and free guides and resources. The idea is that
what's the website? What kind of resources are available?
Well, if you go to suiteeditions.com, we have our guides that you can download for free. We also have a resource section where people can go get free information. The idea is that people can go to our website, get the information they need so that they can do it themselves, or they can find a designer to help them. They can hire us. If the project's a right fit, we can assist them, or we can refer them to other people. And then also we have our training program, which is really geared towards educating investors, homeowners, and then other professionals that want to get into this space, because we really encourage people who are interested in this and are trying to figure out a career that is aligned to consider this as part of their professional career, right? So, if you're a realtor, or if you're a contractor, or a mortgage broker, or you want to be a designer or an architect, this kind of stuff really is going to be a big driving force in the coming years. And so our goal is to give people those resources if they want to choose this as a professional career as well, because they can make a lot of money, and it's very rewarding if you believe in this type of thing.
And like we talked about Toronto being the epicenter, my Toronto realtor friends are already telling me duplexes in Toronto are on absolute fire. Massive demand.
100%,
for both rent and resale.
Yeah.
So for any real estate professional, they should be taking these courses. My entire team took taking your courses. And I was just looking at this nice picture of the Residence Inn by the Marriott. Apparently this is a training event at the Marriott Toronto Mississauga Southwest, 2145 North Sheridan Way, Mississauga. What's this about?
Yeah, so I'll back up a little bit. We had a training program, a second suites training program that we delivered actually right at the start of the pandemic. And since then, we've had close to 300 students. Everyone has really enjoyed the training program. And our thing was...
Yeah, you delivered it here, I remember.
Yeah. We actually had a professional, certified professional course here. But we had, most of it was done online. We did some, on-site workshops, etc. And the goal was to kind of keep adding things on, like garden suites and multiplexes. But what we decided, it made a lot more sense to kind of overhaul the training. So we didn't remove the course, it's still available there. But we've overhauled our training in that we want to teach everyone to be able to look at a site holistically and say what makes the most sense. In some cases, it's just going to be a basement suite. In some cases, it may be a garden suite and a basement suite, or just a multiplex conversion. So we want to train people to be able to look at each property holistically and say what's going to be the highest and best use for that property, right? And so that's what we came up with this program called the Max Suite Strategy Program. We had our early bird in December and January and sold out. So we do have our session sold out for April. And yeah, we're going to be doing another one in the fall though. So if anyone's interested, on the early bird. So that's going to be very exciting.
So sorry, are there any seats left available for the April course?
No, there isn't right now. So we have a waiting list right now of about 15 people.
Get a bigger room, man.
Huh? Well, I think that's going to be a good size. We want to make sure we actually capped it at 30. So it's not really about the venue. It's more about we want to kind of keep it relatively small and for this first session, and then we're going to run it again in the future. And half of it really comes down to the knowledge and education, but the other half is kind of that networking and community that we're trying to build for everyone that's kind of interested in utilizing this strategy.
Tell me more what's involved in the course. Is it all in class? And is there what's after the? Tell me.
Sure. So it's a weekend program that we're going to be delivering, and it's going to cover all the the standard things that we discuss about the Max Suite strategy. So we kind of have everything broken down into exactly how you go about identifying the property, how you go run the pro formas to make sure that the thing, the project works. And then of course, we go through the entire process, right? From identifying the property to the design process to the construction process, so that people that don't have that background are fully aware. And then we also have an on-site component where we're going to invite all the students to spend half a day with us at an actual Max Suite conversion, where we're just going to look through all the details of putting in a basement suite, putting in a garden suite, how did these utilities connect, who did we have to contact to kind of, build all of this.
Right, so it's going to be all highly tactical.
Yeah.
You're combining the theory with the tactical.
100%, yeah, that's really what our goal is because I learned when I was inspecting homes, right, when I actually saw the systems and components. Yeah. And so that's really the best way for people to learn. So we have a lot of realtors and contractors that are part of the program. So the idea is that we want to be able to have these people as trusted professionals that we can refer them out to, right? So that's kind of the goal, is to kind of, again, build that big resource for people that are interested in this.
Yeah, I know many of the top teams that focus on investors have gone. My team's gone. Anita Bonger's team from the East End has gone. I'm sure folks from the North End have gone as well. So yeah, this is the future. And Toronto agents need to be doing this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the non-condo agents, the folks who deal with houses on ground, they need to be learning this stuff.
Absolutely. I think it's a great. I mean, I don't want to say should. Everybody, they can do what they believe in, right? So if condos are your thing,
that's your thing. Let's
do that, right? Like, I don't say everybody should, but I would say that if you are struggling to, as a realtor, struggling to, gain traction in your business, I would consider some sort of a niche, right? And I think this is a great niche to be able to differentiate yourself from other realtors and gain an advantage. Because if, let's say, your client, you can tell your clients that you really understand what properties to look for to be able to do these conversions and convert an existing garage that their family member can live in, or they can house hack and they can get an extra $4,000 or $5,000 because they're going through this process. I think you're going to get a huge client base over time.
I'd just add to that as well. Like, most realtors are investors as well. So if condos and the negative cash flow is not cutting for you, then this is something you should be looking into.
Yeah.
And I see you provide your contractor list as well, which is absolutely critical for the execution of any sort of significant renovation project.
Yeah. We had a contractor list with our basement suite course, and that's going to be revised and updated with new trades and contractors for the GTA. So that's going to be very valuable for a lot of the folks. The big thing is that we also have a community where everybody's able to reach out to each other. There's a support group, there's a business networking group, and really just looking at it and working together to build something.
Super cool. Where's the onsite? Where's the onsite going to be?
We actually have a few dates because we have several projects on the go. So really, depending on where we are along in that project, that's when we think that it's appropriate to bring those folks in. So we'll have several dates available. Just
and locations, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Mostly in Toronto and probably Hamilton.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, cut you off in the top 10. I'm guessing Hamilton's on the list of the more friendly places. Then.
Yeah, I would say so. I have Toronto up there because of policy and the affordability issue. I have Kitchener at number 2. They've been really great to work with from every level.
Right, and great market for student rentals as well.
Yeah.
So student rental strategy works beautiful with basement apartments, garden suites. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And then of course Hamilton's up there as well.
Who else is up there? Anyone in the north or the east?
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't say that these are necessarily encompasses the entire Ontario, right? The list that I have is really places that I've worked in personally, or I've had close associates work in, and they've kind of relayed their experience over to me. So I can't comment about, for example, Kingston, because I've never worked in Kingston, but I have heard that Kingston's a great city for these types of projects as well.
Yeah.
So I'm really focused on kind of the southern Ontario. So Welland in Niagara region is a very good municipality to work with. They're very progressive. Brantford, Guelph, Windsor, so a lot of these areas are looking forward in terms of understanding that this is what is needed for the city to generate revenue and provide more housing for their population.
Right. But this is also the path of least resistance. I imagine that your friends that are telling you that these places are good is because it's the path of least resistance. Why would you go somewhere difficult, like our favorite St. Catharines?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, right?
Or Burlington.
Yeah, why would you go to a place? I'm not saying those cities specifically that you just named, but I'm just saying in general, whether you're an investor or you're a professional.
Or you're a homeowner.
Yeah, or if you're deciding where you want to live.
Yeah.
Right? If I was, let's say, living with my family in Toronto and I'm going to move out and I'm deciding on what city to live in, I'm going to find a place that is progressive and it's growing and they recognize this opportunity. Yeah. And when I call the city, they're willing to give me some answers, right? Rather than, hey, this is not my problem, you deal with it, right? So you know.
And then vice versa. If you don't want to see rentals, if you don't want to see ADUs in your neighborhood, go to places like St. Catharines or Burlington.
Well, you know what? The irony is that they're doing it anyways, but just illegally, right? And that becomes more of a problem because it's not going to stop people. Like I said, basement apartments have been around forever, illegal ones, right? So if you make it too difficult,
we saw lots of them in Hamilton.
Yeah, if you make it too difficult, people are just gonna, they're just gonna say, I'll
and then they'll make it, and they won't be safe, and they won't get inspections. They won't have fire inspections. They won't have city inspections. They won't have permits. Right. It just makes it all more dangerous.
Yeah.
And where can people find information on your? When is the fall course? Do you have a date yet, or?
I don't have a date yet, but they can get the information on our website. So sweetadditions.com is our website, and then if you go to the training tab, that's all the information about what's covered in the course. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be late October-ish.
Halloween.
Yeah.
We can dress up like real estate.
Around that time. You know, people at that time are in November. They may be getting excited about the following year. So, you know, September's a little too busy. You know, people are kind of getting back in the swing of things with school.
Sweet.
Excellent. So, that's
and
probably
it's sweet as in SUITE.
Yeah.
Not sweet as in like desserts.
Yeah. Don't go to that site. It's a legit site. The other one.
It's not.
It's like I think no. I think they sell like I think they sell ingredients for like
baking.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So if you find baking goods, that's not Andy's site.
Yeah.
Sweet as in like, you know, an apartment suite.
Yeah. Or just Google
Additions.com. Additions is plural. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And then, you know, my experience has been wonderful working with the Sweet Additions team. Like Rob on your team has been a trusted advisor. He's worked on a ton of our projects. I don't even know how many projects of mine you worked on even personally. And then just for our clients, it's been, I don't know, a couple hundred. It's been busy.
Yeah, we've done a lot of projects.
Yeah. We created a lot of housing, yet we continue to be the enemy in the eye of the media and the public.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like we're doing things legally and they're nice and people are willing to rent them and we
have permits.
And it's like so I don't know. But you can't, no matter what, there's always going to be people that are going to say negative things, right? So it's unfortunate.
Yeah, but they can be part of the past.
Yeah.
And again, they can move those neighborhoods that I mentioned, those cities I mentioned that you don't have ADUs.
Yeah. But I mean, to move it to kind of shift this to you know, a lot of your narrative in terms of investing south of the border, right? Yeah. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great way for a lot of people to diversify. Yeah. I believe that you shouldn't have all your eggs in one basket. So, you know, there's a lot of our clients and students, you know, they believe in what we're doing, you know, for maybe a certain number of projects, but a lot of them are considering diversifying as well. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about this overall is that it works well anywhere in North America. Mm-hmm. Like you can apply this strategy, you know, if you want to go to Alberta, if you want to go to BC, if you want to go south of the border, especially in the West Coast, these and Texas as well. Mm-hmm. These strategies are being implemented there, and I see it growing. Mm-hmm. Right? If you want to see something grow in the next 10, 20 years, I would say in our North American residential areas, you're going to see growth in this space anywhere.
Anywhere it's expensive.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned Austin, which is the most expensive city in Texas.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise we see it there. Mm-hmm. And I think at a minimum, everyone should have some education in this area so they can identify lots that have hidden value. Like they can be severed. You can build a garden suite on it, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Right? Because like if you find a house that can be severed or have an ADU versus one that can't and everything else is the same, which would you choose?
Exactly.
Right? So
even cities that aren't necessarily expensive overall, but every city and town is going to have
every city in
areas.
Ontario is expensive.
Yeah. Well, if you talk about, let's say, investing in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
Every you know, smaller city, right? Even though that city might not be overall very expensive, there's still going to be pockets of it. Like there's going to be people that want to live in certain areas that are walkable, that are, you know, close to, you know, certain amenities and nice areas, right?
Generally, those would be more expensive areas.
Yeah, those are going to be more expensive areas. So in those areas, you can find properties where you can do this type of stuff, and you're going to get high demand.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's again something that, like you said, it's worth looking into and being somewhat educated about. And we encourage people just, go to our site and just get all the free resources there first.
Sweetadditions.com. You're on Instagram. You're
Yep.
TikTok too?
No, not TikTok.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want anybody spying on me.
Instagram, YouTube, tons of videos on YouTube. Yeah, and our mutual friends and I, we laugh behind your back. You're like the socialist of the real estate investors.
I'm the socialist?
Yeah, you're the
Really?
You're like maybe that's a little unfair. You're like you're the one that likes to share the most and educate the people for the most. And like you capped your program that sold out, right? You're not about the money. You're more about the quality of everything.
No, I'm definitely about the money. It's just that I think that there's a certain way to do it, and I think that we're taking the right long-term approach.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for doing this, Andy.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Thanks. Good to catch up.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate from scratch, my team teaches beginners how to use the #1 investment strategy that I personally use in a virtual free training class every month. Go to investortraining.ca/YouTube to register for our next class. The link's also in the description as well. I publish at least 2 to 3 videos a week here, so subscribe if you want to keep learning from seasoned investors like myself and my guests. And if you're just starting out, feel free to ask questions and comment below, and I do the best to answer each of those comments and questions myself. Again, if you're ready to learn the nitty-gritty about real estate investing from a professional investor, register for our next virtual class. That's at investortraining.ca/YouTube. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video.